she put her money where her mouth is. She now has something called the greatest person of the day. And it's totally inspiring. I encourage all of you that you can sign up for it. It comes right to your email account. And every day, today is Zainab Salbi. If you know her, she's this extraordinary woman from Iraq who's promoting women's rights around the world, starting in Iraq. It's amazing. And every day she's highlighting some person who is out there making a difference, who don't usually get on the front page. She also has a whole section of the Huffington Post now called Impact, where you can go and just see, and she's encouraging people to blog about stuff they're doing. I hope, what I would say, Patricia, is anybody you know in the media, talk to them. Think about, could you do something like that? Could you have a greatest person of the day, or an impact section, or take a little of your resources and focus on what's going on in the social sector? And not just the good news, but also, how do we make things better? What can we learn from mistakes? I think it's essential because media so much drives our discourse, what we prioritize, what's important. Over here.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Deb.
Because of the work I do with so many different organizations, nonprofit and philanthropic, I constantly have people coming to me who want to work in our sector.
Mm-hmm.
They really, really want to work in our sector, and many of them are young people just coming out of school. And of course, I get a lot of the geeks who are also idealists. And they are, I'm bringing up something that you just brought up, which is they don't want to be condemned to a life of borderline poverty in order to work in mission-based organizations. Some of them I know will become social entrepreneurs, and some of the work, I think, some of the answer is for some of us to stigmatize people who are stigmatize less people who are .coms instead of .orgs. But there really is a problem with people who want to do this work, mm-hmm. and especially carrying a heavy student debt mm-hmm. load, or just not wanting to lead a life of financial degradation. They end up either leaving the state where they can get decently paying jobs in mission-based organizations, or they end up taking for-profit jobs that don't really serve their heart's dreams. Right. And I'm interested in having you address that. Sure. And see if you have any policy suggestions.
Sure. Well, I think idealistic geeks are very powerful. As someone who has benefited from them, because they bring it all in terms of understanding the technology today. I think there's a number of things we can do. First of all, I think we should take the AmeriCorps program to scale. Go beyond the 250,000 authorized in the Serve America Act, get to 1 million people, and provide every single person in this country who wants to spend a year in service the chance to do so in exchange for a scholarship. I would also change there's a scholarship. It finally got up to the size of Pell Grants with the Serve America Act, the Kennedy Serve America Act. I'd have a deal where you could say, if you're willing to serve your country for a year, you get the equivalent of a year's tuition at a state school, which is now about $10,000 a year. So if you're willing to serve for 4 years, it's like a GI Bill for the social sector. If you're willing to, no matter your economic background, where you come from, if you're willing to serve for 4 years, you can get a college education. And if you don't want to go to a state school, then you can apply that scholarship to a private school, but so that you don't, have that same level. Or you could get the equivalent in loan forgiveness. So I think it could start there. So when people, I think we do need more fellowships and scholarships, loan forgiveness. I think the other thing, we all, as leaders in this sector, have to be okay with saying our sector has to become professional, and we have to stop being treated as second class. Organizations should be judged by their effectiveness. This whole idea of like overhead and then programming, we don't ask Microsoft what your overhead is. We don't. If we did, they'd never get a grant. Bill Gates alone would disqualify them. We ask, does your product work? We don't ask Apple, what's your overhead in creating the iPad or the iPhone or this stuff that we fall in love with? We ask, are you effective? And I think that, nonprofit salaries aren't going to be the same as private sector, so they shouldn't be. You get different rewards in the nonprofit, but they have to be enough so that people can commit to this being a career. Finally, after about 15 years, my parents stopped asking me, when are you going to get a real job? Once they saw that I was sticking with us. But it really, literally, it took a while. And other friends said, well, when are you going to go use that law degree? And so I think, we have to be okay with, yes, this sector is professional. It's performing you know, the work that we all do is the most needed and important work in society. Taking care of the vulnerable, educating children, you know, bringing people out of poverty, providing for the arts, doing the advocacy work. This is what makes our country special and great. As I said, de Tocqueville noticed this, so it's okay. But we have to be okay with advocating for that. With policymakers, I mean, you know, Charles Grassley, who was the head of the Finance Committee, was famous for just like going through these I-90s and just like dinging nonprofits based on their overhead. Now, if they're not effective, great, ding them. But if they're effective and doing great work, then it's okay. I'm not saying it should be out of whack. It's got to be reasonable. But this idea that, you know, you have to basically, you know, take a vow of poverty to pursue the nonprofit sector, it's not good for the country. We're not going to get those 640,000 senior managers that Bridgeband tells us we need by 2016, or the 80,000 senior leaders. Again, it's got to be reasonable. I'm not saying, you know, if you want to make a lot of money, you'll make more money in the private sector. But we have to stop feeling like we're second class. And it's not going to happen until we become advocates for that, and we make the case, and we're also effective, and lead that charge. And there are a lot of young people who want to do exactly what you're saying, Deb, and they come out with loans, or they can't make the numbers work, and we lose a lot of talent that way.
Hello. Do I need this? Well, anyway, the question that I have is, as I was listening to you speaking about the media and second class in terms of the sector, I guess I started thinking about how when issues that, you know, the opposition, so to speak, address, the media or the opposition comes out in full force, whether they agree on the ideals, or the problem. Is part of the problem with this sector that we all have our own set of values or issues that are our priorities, and when the sector is being attacked or treated as second class, we don't embrace each other or push back on the opposition. And how, if it's not happening, should this sector, nonprofits, philanthropic institutions and such, begin to do that in a way that we're not so separate because our issue is our priority?
Tell me your name.
Oh, my name is Stefana Stokes, and I'm actually with Access Strategies Fund.
Terrific. Well, thank you. Stefan, you know, I'd say a couple things on that. I think that, you know, I've had this journey from sort of direct service to advocacy to then political engagement, and I think that I'd say a couple things. First, we have to get comfortable with advocacy as a sector. I was talking to Tracy about this, or to Kelly about this earlier. You know, often, you know, Michael, my partner I started City with, is just brilliant. He taught me about something called the social entrepreneur's trap. And what happened is, you know, often people start an organization like Michael and I did, you know, because we wanted to see a movement for national service. Or Jeffrey Canada with Harlem Children's Zone wants to see a movement to end poverty. And at a certain point, your organization gets so big it starts running you instead of you running it, and you find you have less and less time to do the movement work because you're spending so much time just making the organization work. That's part of the reason why I ultimately decided to leave City and do Be the Change, so I could do advocacy full time and not have to worry about, you know, leading a big institution. But I think it starts with us being comfortable with doing advocacy, and sometimes we don't want to advocate for ourselves. You know, we just want to do the work. But it also has to, you know, meetings like this, we have to decide, well, what is our agenda as a sector? And we got to have the fights among ourselves. Like when we brought, for the Service Nation campaign, we helped to bring all the leading service groups together and natural allies, and we got into rooms and we spent a year saying, let's come up with an agenda that we can agree on. Let's have the fights amongst ourselves, and let's agree that we're going to come to some kind of consensus, and then we're going to go speak with one voice. And we're also going to agree we're not going to cut side deals. So if we don't get everything we want, we're not then going to go to our favorite member of Congress. And this was the deal that we cut with Senators Kennedy and Hatch.